In Romans 12:1, the Apostle Paul writes this: "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship." So Paul begins here by saying, in view of God's mercy. And what he has in mind is the fact that we've all sinned and fallen short of God's glory. And yet, God has given us grace through Jesus Christ, the good news of the gospel. So in light of that amazing and wonderful truth, Paul calls us now to offer our bodies as living sacrifices. Well, in the ancient world, sacrifices were a common part of worship, and animal sacrifices were really an integral element of ancient Judaism. And the Old Testament explained that when you brought an animal to be sacrificed, you were to understand that its life was being accepted in place of your own as an atonement for your sin. Well, with the New Testament, what we came to understand is that all those animal sacrifices really did was set aside our sin until Jesus came and offered full atonement for our sin by his death on the cross. And when Jesus did that, those animals no longer needed to die in our place because Jesus had died in our place once and for all. So because those sacrifices were no longer necessary, Paul calls us to honor God with a different kind of sacrifice. He calls us to offer ourselves, our lives, as living sacrifices to God. And the question might be, well, how exactly do we do that? Well, it starts with dedicating your life to God, putting him at the center of everything. And it means living for him in every situation, in all that we say, in all that we do, and in every decision that we make. And if we do this, Paul says that our lives will be holy and pleasing to God. But the truth is that seeking to live for God is not easy. It means doing things his way, not our way. It means going against the crowd at times. It means going against our own sinful nature. And all of those things are always kind of pointing us in the wrong direction. But Paul says that when we choose to live for God, something amazing happens. It says that our lives become true and proper worship. Isn't that just a kind of a mind-blowing thought that you can live your life as an act of worship to God? You see, worship isn't just an event that happens in church or maybe in private moments when we offer our hearts to God. It's really supposed to be about all of life. It's really supposed to be a way of life. And that actually makes sense when you think about it, because really our lives should be worship because the whole world is spiritual. We don't think of it that way. We often draw this line and we think that there are spiritual places and non-spiritual places, and then spiritual things like worship belong in spiritual places like church, but not at work or on the ball field, places that we think of as not being spiritual. But that's not the truth of things. God didn't make spiritual things and non-spiritual things. He didn't make spiritual places and non-spiritual places. God made one world, and it's not divided. All of it is spiritual. There's no part of our life or this world in which we can't live for God, in which our lives cannot serve as living sacrifices and worship to God. So let's do it. Let's live our lives as living sacrifices, live them as wonderful acts of worship to our God.